إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, today we are looking at the 24th of Rajab, 1438. This is 3 days away from the day commemorating the Al-Isra'i wal-Mi'raj of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We commemorate this on the 27th of Rajab. Now, on another 5 days, we will be looking for the moon of Sha'ban. If the moon of Sha'ban is seen, this will put us 29 to 30 days from Ramadan. So we are looking at being just a month away from the month of Ramadan, a month and some days. So it is a time to prepare, to be ready. And if you've not had the opportunity to do Monday, Thursday fastings or make up the fasts that you may have missed during Ramadan, Sha'ban being the month that it is the time to make those up for those who are able. Today we reach 1300 to 1416 AH of the Prophecies fulfilled, which runs from 1883 to 1996. I made a typing error the last time for 1300. Whatever that date was, it needs to be crossed out, and instead of 18, whatever it was, it should be 1883. So 1300 to 1416, this is correct. It is 1883. The notation on the last lesson for 1300 on the Kafir era, because again, their calendar is off, and you have to also remember, one of the reasons why it's difficult to make conversions is because you have to remember their calendar was originally Julian. Then there was the AUC. Then there was the Byzantine. Then there was the Julian renovation. Then there was the Gregorian renovation. And you have to remember they have leap years and lunisolar adjustments. So it's not our fault that they can't get their calendar right the first time. Our calendar was right the first time and continues to be. It's not our fault that they can't get their calendar right. They're no better than the Egyptians who couldn't get their calendar right, or the Mayans. If you try to do a lunisolar calendar, you're going to wind up with 5 days extra, and you're going to have to create leap years, and you're going to have to create adjustments. The same thing the Catholic Church had to do for 1200 years. I don't care who you are. You cannot reconcile the sun and moon count. You just can't do it. You either have to go solar or you have to go lunar. That aside, and the failings of the Kafir empires, today represents another milestone. Today, from 1300 to 1416 AH, this represents the final class of fulfilled prophecies. So of all the prophecies that have been fulfilled, this is the final class of fulfilled prophecies. After this class, there are no more remaining except that they are in the future, or they are part of prophecies concurrent that are constantly reappearing. So I'm not going to quote them again, because concurrent prophecies, there are prophecies that were fulfilled one time and that's it. Then there are concurrent prophecies where they appear again and again and again. I'm not going to go over them again when we start discussing Al-Masih al-Dajjal and other areas, and I will not field questions on that topic because this matter has been resolved. And when we go through a matter very thoroughly, we don't go over it again and again. We do it thoroughly, we get it right the first time, then we don't do it again. Because there's a level of thoroughness, which if Allah makes it possible for us, I believe that we have most likely 8 more lessons remaining, okay? Because of the fact of some of the prophecies, to get through them, the length of time, and what the scholars have said about them. We have a large amount to get through remaining. So I'd say we have between 4 and 8 left. Okay, 4 and 8 left. So we'll probably be stopping on the 15th of Sha'ban or somewhere after that time, just after, for the Ramadan break, and then completing the remaining of them after Ramadan if Allah preserves our health. So we're looking at the first prophecies that cover 1300 to 1416 AH, which corresponds to the Kafir era of 1883, 1996 with the Gregorian adjustments. The first prophecy is the Muslims starting to abandon checking sources of wealth. This date of this prophecy was made 9 AH. The fulfillment was between 800 and 1345 on AH and onwards. It's a concurrent prophecy. Imam al-Bukhari has collected a hadith in Al-Jami' al-Sahih in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "A time will come upon the people in which they will not care where they took their wealth from, whether it be impermissible or permissible." Imam Al-Hajj al-Asqalani, rahimahullah, has mentioned. Ibn at-Tin said that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this as a warning about the tribulation of wealth. This is one of the great indicators of his prophecy, as he has given news about affairs which are not in his time period. In this is a clear warning not to equalize between all things. If one were to do this, then taking his wealth from any source is permitted to him, irrespective of the source. Close quote. Now this is mentioned by Ibn Hajj al-Asqalani in his text, volume 4, pages 296 to 297. So now this prophecy, the number of ahadith like this and others were also quoted by a major imam of this time, Imam Abdul Qadir ibn Badran. Now in the enclosure that I've given you, which is labeled Conducting Transactions with a Bank, Imam Abdul Qadir ibn Badran, rahimahullah, who died 1346, he quoted similar ahadith when being asked this question by someone from Qazan. So the following question was put forward by one of the Muslims of Qazan, Russia, by the name of Abdul Karim ibn Damanla Muhammad Sadiq al-Uthmani al-Qarghadi, on the date of 12th of Dhul Hijjah, 1331. The question was, is it permissible to conduct transactions with the institutions called banks that have appeared? The answer given by the Marja' Imam Abdul Qadir ibn Badran ad-Dumi, rahimahullah, is as follows. Quote, "The word banks is the plural of the word bank, which is a foreign word and came into the Turkish language as the word baniq. This is a word that has spread to Arabic now and is being used as a new expression, thus classed as a neologism. This word does not appear in the books of fiqh either, except those that have been authored in our time. With that being said, however, the function of the word conveys the taking of a specific place for the purpose of placing money therein, this money belonging either to a designated number of individuals or to one specific individual, and that being for the use of profit, and this profit is calculated accordingly by the month or annually every year exponentially. Now, it is not unknown for this to be calculated not only hourly, but even according to the minutes. The rules of service have specific requirements and restrictions of service." Close quote. He's talking about your T's and C's. And he's talking about the profits he's talking about is not just your normal thaman. He's talking about your interest, the interest derivation. This is exactly what's going on. The Muslim world did not have banks. And because some of us have been so used to drinking the Kool-Aid and going through the Kafir school system, if we haven't deprogrammed, think, well, how did the people, where did they store their money? Well, because we had treasuries. We didn't have banks, we had treasuries. And there was a huge difference between a treasury and a bank. If you have money in a treasury can't take your money and loan it out for other. This is why you can't go to a bank and get your money back. Everyone can't go to the bank and say, we'd all like the money back that we have in our accounts, because the bank has loaned that money out for other transactions. This is haram. Now that's a different issue of the full discussion, the difference between a treasury and a bank. I'm not going to get into this. The Imam goes further in his ruling. He says, quote, "Most of the merchants in the four corners of the earth are transacting with banks, with the exception of those whom Allah the Exalted has given success to them so that they do not have to do so. Close quote. The merchants he's talking about are also Muslim. So the Muslims, because the banks could not have done what they've done if the Muslims had not allowed this, and the merchants in the Muslim countries had not transacted with them. This made it possible for them to open. And they knew how it functioned, because you can't not know how something functions unless you know that you're going to get profit from it. And this is why they did this. So the Imam goes on to say, quote, the general ruling in the matter is that transacting with the bank is a branch of riba, usury. And what is more, it is a number of branches of riba. Close quote. So what he's saying here is the general ruling in the matter. So it's not in all cases, it's the general manner. So it's a general ruling. In general, it's going to be impermissible. Now he's got another ruling, which we're not going to get into right now, which has to do with Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Kufr and pressure being put on Muslims and other areas and when there's exceptions to the rule. This is not the topic for this right now. We're talking about the fact that it came into effect, that banks came into the Muslim world, that Muslims no longer, these merchants that allowed this to happen, no longer paid attention to the sources of their wealth. So this is not the place to ask, well, what should I do with my money now? That's not the topic right now. The topic right now is signs of the end of time. We're not talking about the finer details of central banking. It's the fact that these banks came about and that they came to exist and that they gathered a foothold and that the merchants that allowed them didn't care where the origin of their money was coming from. The Imam goes on to say, quote, the general ruling in the matter is that transacting with the bank is a branch of riba, usury. And what is more, it is a number of branches of riba. Let us now consider our answer to the question asked, as the reason for it is the presence of these institutions in the land of Russia. We will therefore focus our discussion just on the two issues of transacting with the bank and the fact that it is in the land of Russia. I would like to begin from the outset with the statement that the land of Russia is indeed classed as Dar al-Harb, and its people are the people of Dar al-Harb, without any doubt. The only people not falling under this ruling being the Muslims domiciled there, as Muslims are not to be classed as people of Dar al-Harb. Close quote. Now this distinction then is talking about the fact that Muslims, because we have different laws that we follow, the Muslims and the unbelievers, we have different distinctions. There are two classes of place on earth. There's known as Dar al-Islam. Dar al-Islam is anywhere where the laws of the revealed law are in effect. Where the laws of the revealed law are in effect. This is Dar al-Islam. Dar al-Kufr is anywhere where the laws of Kufr predominate. Now, Dar al-Kufr has many different levels within it. One level of Dar al-Kufr is called Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Harb is where there is open hostilities. There's no clear rule established in the land. So the Muslims and the unbelievers are engaged in warfare. There's no government. There's no clear structure. And so the things that go on in Dar al-Harb, which is a subset of Dar al-Kufr, are different to Dar al-Kufr proper. This is a much more developed discussion. But what he's saying is that the Muslims currently that are being oppressed in Russia, which is Dar al-Harb, are having the structures of Dar al-Harb put into their countries. Now the merchants, the Muslim merchants that are profiting from this invasion, from this destruction, know what's going on and are profiting from it, which means they don't care where their wealth is coming from. They don't care. They know that these institutions are coming in that do nothing but bring interest and riba and usury and all these things. And these people, they have nothing coming but wickedness, right? Now, the Imam goes on to say, quote, as for in cases where the wealth was from the Muslims, then this matter requires clarification. In the case of Muslims that were transacting with one another in transactions of riba, this is not permitted by consensus, and this holds true for a Muslim who might transact with them. Close quote. Now, this is taken from Al-Mawahib al-Rabbaniyya في الأجوبة عن أسئلة القزانية, pages 183 to 187. So the Muslims not caring about where their wealth comes from has to do with the fact of the merchants doing this And then it's become such a norm among certain levels of the population of this ummah that even Muslims that pray and fast don't care where their wealth comes from. There's no understanding of how this comes about. Just like there's people that don't know where their meat comes from, that there's a chicken that has to be killed, that there's beef. They think that the hamburger comes ready-made, not that there's a cow or a bull that has to be killed. There's people that think that there's actually a chocolate cow and that there's not chocolate mixed with white milk. They don't understand there's a disconnection between people and the actual khalq, the actual creation. And it starts at the rizq level. People don't know where their rizq is coming from. So we have the next prophecy, which is the dissolving of the Khilafah. This prophecy was made 9 AH, and the fulfillment of this prophecy was 656, 898, and 1336 or 1337 AH. All right, that was the fulfillment. Now, the reason for this is we have to go back to this. 656, because the Abbasid Khilafah was attacked in Baghdad by the Tatar and devastated. In 898, it was the Umayyad, the remainders of the Umayyad Khilafah in Andalus, which were attacked by the Catholic Church with the assistance and auspices of Catherine of Aragon and Ferdinand. Right, so they attacked. So that was another Khilafah system. Because if you remember when the Abbasids took over in 132 AH, they overthrew the Bani Umayyah. And the remainder of the Bani Umayyah escaped to Andalus and continued the Khilafah system there. 1336, 1337, around that area, we're looking at the Khilafah of the Ottomans, who are a run-through of the Abbasids. Right. So we have Qais ibn Ja'far narrating from his father, who narrated from his grandfather, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam warned, "There shall be after me Khalifas, then after the Khalifas shall be Emirs, then after the Emirs shall be kings, and after the kings shall be tyrannical rulers." Okay, the Arabic word tyrannical rulers, Jababira. Jababira is the word for tyrannical rulers. These are people that have come to power. Jababira means that they hold power, they've come to power, and they only hold it among themselves and their close family. Jababira. "Then there shall come a man from my household that will fill the earth with justice, just as at that time it shall be filled with injustice. Al-Qahtani shall be ordered after that with command. By the one who sent me with the truth, Al-Qahtani is certainly less than the man to come." This is collected by Imams At-Tabarani and Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, volume 22, pages 356 to 357. Abu Nu'aym Al-Maqdisi in Aqd al-Darar, pages 18 to 19. Al-Arbili in Kashf al-Ghummah, volume 3, pages 272 to 273. And Ibn Asakir in Tarikh Medina Dimashq, in volume 61, pages 194 to 195. Now, also keep in mind, when the Muraji' were asked about this, like Imams Ismail ibn Badran and Imam al-Buti and others, what age are we in? They said we are in the age of the Jababira. Okay, which is the last one, because we've been told first there will be Khalifas, then after the Khalifas, Emirs, then the kings, then after the kings come the tyrannical rulers. We are in the age of the Jababira. That's the last in this series of rulers, right? Hudayfa al-Yaman, radiyallahu anhu, said, "Messenger of Allah, shall there be after this good some evil?" The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, "Yes, there shall be callers at the gates of the fire. Whoever shall answer them, they shall toss him into the fire with him." Hudayfa al-Yaman said, "Describe them to us." The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, "They have our complexion and they speak our languages." Okay, this means that they are Arabs. These aren't Indians, they're not Tuvans, they're not Mongolians. These are Arabs. Hudayfa said, "So what would you order me to do at such a time?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Stay with the body of the Muslims and their Imam." Hudayfa requested, "And if there is not a body and an Imam to go with it?" Okay, so he's asking, What if there's not a body, meaning a group of people behind that imam, this grand imam, which is the Khalifa? It's from this statement that Imam Malik and other scholars had as emergency fiqh what Muslims do when there is no Khilafah. There's emergency fiqh that's been done. The school of Imam Ahmed devised several different strategies of what happens and how you still continue the distribution of zakah and the jihads and all these other wars. Imam Malik and his school have already come to decisions because they witnessed these things in their midst, right? They witnessed these things, right? Many of the scholars had not directly witnessed these things happen, so they didn't speak on it, but these scholars did. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Stay away from all the sects in totality. Even if you should bite on the roots of trees until death comes to you while you are in that state. There shall be imams after me who shall not seek by my guidance. They will not judge with my sunnah. There shall be among them men who have hearts like demons, although they are in the form of human beings." Hudayfa said, "What shall I do if I should come to that time, Messenger of Allah?" He replied, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Hear and obey your emir." Now notice the language. He didn't say Khalifa, your emir. Because if he comes to that time, it's going to be a time after Khalifa. So you're going to be looking at emirs, umara, rulers or governors. Hear and obey your emir, even if he should strike your back and take what belongs to you. This is collected by Imam Muslim in Al-Jami' al-Sahih. Right? Now, there's also a hadith that's been quoted by scholars such as Qurtubi and others. And the hadith used by Qurtubi and the men that I'm about to quote is from Abu Dawood. And it is narrated from the companion Thawban radiyallahu anhu, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "A time will come in which the nations gather against you and call out to one another just as diners call to a banqueting plate." Someone said, "Messenger of Allah, shall it be because we are few on that day?" He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "No, you will actually be many, but you will be like the foam, the flotsam that floats on top of the water. And Allah shall remove from the hearts of your enemies fear of you. And He shall cause to come enter into your hearts al-wahn." And someone said, "Messenger of Allah, what is al-wahn?" He said, "Love of the earthly life and hatred of death." That's the end of the hadith in Abu Dawood's collection. Now, the scholars in mind that we're now going to quote, which is a grand meeting regarding the collapse of the Khilafah, quoted these ahadith and others before they brought together this meeting. Right? So, this was a meeting called together by them, which we'll have the date mentioned. A grand meeting was convened in Egypt, referred to as the body of religious knowledge in Egypt for the research into the matter of the Khilafah and preaching, and the meeting was for the entire Muslim world on behalf of all of the Muslims. An official document was written, and we will mention this document in full due to its importance. The document was written at the meeting on Tuesday, the 19th of Sha'ban, 1342. Wherein was gathered the general authority over the religious seminaries and a group known as the Greater Committee for Religious Knowledge. This was done under the headship of the following. So you're going to notice that there were no economists in this meeting. No one was there from IBM, which was around during this time. No one was there from Simon & Schuster. No bankers from Washington Mutual were present. No prime ministers were there. No presidents were there. No disc jockeys from the local radio station could be found. The people that have temporal and religious authority, and I keep saying this, but it's important to pound this into your chest so that you grasp it. The scholars, the Marja people, have both spiritual and temporal authority. That's why they could have a meeting like this. Think the presidents can pull something like this off? So, they were under the leadership of the following: Sheikh Mahmoud Abul Fadl al-Jizawi, the noble Sheikh, head over Al-Azhar University and the seminaries of the Muslims. That means all of them. Sheikh Muhammad al-Maraghi, the head of the courts of the revealed law. That means all of them. Sheikh Abdul Rahman Qura'a, the Grand Mufti of Egypt. Sheikh Ahmed Haroun, the trustee of Al-Azhar and director of religious seminaries. Sheikh Hussein Wali, the general secretary of the highest Al-Azhar Majlis and the religious seminaries. The sheikhs of the highest seminary. So these are the sheikhs of many of these sheikhs. These are the sheikhs that teach the people. So you have a difference in Arabic with alim. Alim means he's memorized the Quran, the requisite ahadith with them. He knows the tafsir and all these other things. Allama means alim maker. So these are alim makers. It's the job of these people to make ulama and imams and qadis and all this. Okay? They include Sheikh Muhammad al-Ahmadi al-Zawahiri, Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Latif al-Faham, Sheikh Abdul Ghani Mahmoud, Sheikh Ibrahim al-Jibali. And there were also the sheikhs of all different disciplines of knowledge at Al-Azhar, and many from the senior scholars, particularly people such as Sheikh Bakhit al-Muti'i, Sheikh Muhammad Shakir, Sheikh Muhammad al-Najdi, the head over the Shafi'ii scholars, Sheikh Ahmed Nasr, the custodian of the Maliki scholars, Sheikh Suba'i al-Dhahabi, the head over the Hanbali scholars. Again, these are not just titles, this is all of them. All of the head over the entire madhabs. Sheikh Abdul Muti'i al-Sharshimi, and from the scholars, researchers of the seminaries of religious knowledge, and their affirmation was reached after a long meeting and research. The results of this meeting are the following. So you're going to hear what the results are of this meeting. These are the heads of the religion. We're not talking about your local mufti at the masjid, your imam who leads the salah and recites Surah Al-Fatiha in a staccato fashion. We're talking about actual people who lead this religion. The results of the meeting are as follows. Quote, there has been much discussion among the people on the subject of the Khilafah since the expulsion of the Emir Abdul Majid from Istanbul. The Muslims have attached importance to researching and thinking about what is necessary for them to do and establishing what is compulsory for them in their pure religion. Due to this situation, we decided to give our ruling in the matter of the Khilafah of Abdul Majid and that which the Muslims are required to do now and thereafter. Close quote. So the Muslims have been asking about this. What do we do about this? What should we do? Not form parties, not form groups, not sit around in circles and eat full medemis and talk about what should we do. We're eating mulukhiyah and dip our bread in and decide what should we do. No, we're going to tell you what should be done. So these leaders, they continue by saying, quote, the Khilafah, which is also referred to as the Imama, is the general leadership in the religion, and the establishment and maintaining of the leadership of this kind is for the general good and protection of the religion and discharging of the affairs of the Ummah. Thus, in this religion, the dispensing of judgments and discharging of worldly affairs according to the rulings taken from the principles of the revealed law is carried out by the Imam. This very Imam is the representative of the one who first brought the revealed law, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from which all these rulings and principles derive. An individual becomes the Imam as such by A, the oath of allegiance being given to him by the high-ranking scholars. B, or by a living imam leaving the post to his next successor. But this must be that his judgment is universally felt among those under his rule, and that those subject to his rule fear his power and authority. Close quote. So it means that his power has to be universally felt by those under his rule. Criminals can be grabbed. Fugitives can be gripped. Right? Those subject to his rule fear his power and authority. So I know that someone can't be in this authority or position of authority if he can't grip anybody, if they can't be punished, they can't be stopped. Right? If someone says, well, I'm the Khalifa of the Muslims, and we can put you in jail. You can't be the Khalifa of the Muslims. We can put you in jail. We can put your family in jail. We can say, we're not doing that, and no one can do anything about it. You're not the Khalifa of the Muslims. The Imams go on to say, quote, now in such a case where the Imam is given the oath of allegiance by the people, and his judgment is not universally felt among them due to his inability of ruling them, or the previous Imam gives his authority to his successor and his judgment is not universal among those subjects to him due to his inability, then such an individual could neither be declared Imam by oath of allegiance, nor by a living Imam abdicating and handing over authority. Then there is also. So, close quote. So he's saying that even if the people are in agreement with it, or an existing Imam, if he gives his authority over to someone who doesn't have the power, what's known as shoka, he can't enforce and execute his power, then we won't accept, as leaders, as the Maraja people, we won't accept him being a Khalifa, because he can't carry out the office. And it's hazardous to have someone who can't carry out his position. You can't accept someone in this circumstance. We can't accept him. So the Imams go on to say, quote, then there is also, C, the post of Imam being brought about solely by conquest. So when an individual conquers over the Khilafah, usurps his place, and unseats the first ruler while receiving the oath of allegiance or Khilafah, just as happened with most of the Khalifas of the past, this person is referred to and accepted as the Khalifa, and the oath of allegiance is due, and rebelling against him would not be permissible. All of the aforementioned is well known in the books of fiqh and explicitly discussed in the books of the senior Hanafi scholars. The Imam bears the responsibility of disposing of all matters the subjects require, and it is necessary that all of the governorates under authority are derived from him and declared by his word. This includes things like the administration of ministers, rulers over provinces, administration of judges, and the administrative posts for the leaders over the armies and the border patrols and so forth. A man has his post of imamah dissolved by anything that would render him unable to rule, i.e., his becoming a prisoner, and has no hope of being freed in the near future, or his inability to discharge the duties of the religion and the ummah at large. In addition to this, whenever a man in the post of imamah is found to be in such error that this would necessitate a deficiency regarding the state of affairs of the Muslims, or neglect of the affairs of the religion, then it is permissible for the ummah to remove him from his post as long as this does not lead to tribulation. If his removal would lead to further tribulation, he is left in power based upon the principle of warding off a greater evil with a lesser one. The Muslims judging in the matter of the leader, Wahiduddin, were pleased with his abdication due to reasons which they knew about him, and they believed that abdication was the best option. Close quote. Now, Wahiduddin, as a general principle, he was the last actual Khalifa. His name was Mahmud VI. He was the 36th and the last actual real Khalifa who had power, meaning that he could actually stop things and grip people. He's the last one who really had power, because after his time, they split the Khilafah into two pieces. You had your Sultana and the Khilafah. And Khilafah became a vestigial organ. It was a centerpiece, and the Sultana, the actual powerful authority, was put in what was called the Turkish Assembly. And these Turkish people, who were actually from Greece and Greek people, came in and took power of it when these Turkish people would later form Turkey under the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So the Imams go on to say, quote, the Turks then brought forward the leader Abdul Majid for the Khilafah, announcing that all authority vested in the office of Khilafah was removed, and then vested in the Turkish National Assembly, that soon after declared the leader Abdul Majid to be Khalifa in name alone, a figurehead. In doing this, the Turks brought about an innovation, bid'ah, that the Muslims had never known before in the annals of their history. Then after that, they brought about another innovation, bid'ah, which was the abolition of the office of Khilafah. Close quote. So first of all, they separated the powers. So you separate the Khilafah into, okay, this is a spiritual or sacerdotal position. And then the actual Sultana, the authority, the ability to do that's in the Turkish National Assembly. So we've separated between these two groups. You do not separate powers in the revealed law. So when you have people on television with peeled faces because they regularly and purposefully shave their beards, and they negate their religion by speaking open kufr, and they say Islam was the first religion to separate the powers, that's complete and utter hogwash. Because these imams here are saying you don't separate the powers. You don't do this, because this is how you're able to abolish it. Because once it's only a vestigial organ, then you can say, well, we can remove it now. If you have 6 fingers, once you've wrapped it up in the gauze tight enough where circulation finishes, you can lop it off. And that's what they made the Khilafah, a vestigial organ. They moved the administrative capital to that great bastion of wisdom and righteousness, which is the #1 sex change capital in the world. They moved it to Ankara. And Istanbul was left in the bushes. It became a museum piece. That's why you notice all the Islam that's there, it's locked up in the museum, where it's supposed to be in their minds. So the Imams then carry on to say, quote, neither the Khilafah nor the appointment of Abdul Majid by the Turkish National Assembly were based on the revealed law. The religion of Islam knows no such Khilafah in which his office is limited and reduced, and he is pleased with that. There is no authentic oath of allegiance given to him by the Muslims based on the revealed law. Close quote. So what they're saying is this person, Abdul Majid, he might be a good man and such, but it's not a valid Khalifa. Because the office is based on a falsehood, something in the revealed law. And when they're saying there's nothing based on the revealed law, okay, that neither the Khilafah nor the appointment of Abdul Majid in the Turkish National Assembly were based in the revealed law, which means it's an act of kufr because you're legislating. Right. So they say, quote, then we turn our attention away from all the aforementioned and say that the oath, when we turn our attention away from all the aforementioned and say that the oath of allegiance to this leader was valid, it is still invalid, as the individual in question, by virtue of the office appointed to him, cannot carry out the judgment which in the revealed law is binding upon such a person bearing the position of Khilafah, when the term is understood in legal context. When one knows that it is necessary that he complete all matters described in the office of the Khilafah, according to the meaning given to this position in the revealed law, then Abdul Majid has had this title removed from him, due to the very real inability to stand up and dispose of the affairs of the Muslims, both spiritual and temporal. He is unable to establish his kingdom in the land, protest and defend himself, and his family after the Turks have completed their conquest over him. Close quote. Now understand this. He wound up fleeing to Switzerland. So the Khalifa flees to Switzerland with his wives and his children. Couldn't go to any Muslim country because they were in chaos. And he probably could have been killed there by agents or whoever. So he flees to Switzerland. He winds up being buried in Damascus, but he flees to Switzerland. And there you can see pictures online if you dig of him standing in state and looking spiritual and these other things. But he's pretty much a broken man. He's a broken man. He was a patsy. And under him came the banks and all these other things. The Imams go on to say, quote, based upon all of this, the conclusion is that Abdul Majid does not have any oath of allegiance binding on the Muslims, due to lifting of the intent of what the office of imamah entails in the revealed law. It is neither wise nor noble for Islam and the Muslims that an oath of allegiance be claimed over them for an individual that cannot establish his rule in the land, and the people do not establish his rule in it. The centrality of the Khilafah in the religion of Islam and among the Muslims has an importance that cannot be negated. This position has its rank in matters such as manifesting and exalting the status of the religion and its people, unifying the body of the Muslims, strengthening their ranks with power and affirmation. It is necessary that the Muslims think about the system of their Khilafah and how it is established according to the agreed upon judgments in Islam, and not becoming neglectful of the Muslim regimes, which the Muslims are pleased with, to discharge their judgments. They should not be pleased with the animalistic violence and regimes that the Turks have brought about, through the abolition of the very place of the Khilafah, conquest over the leader Abdul Majid, and then throwing the Islamic world into complete chaos. The Muslims have no guarantee of safety under these regimes, nor can they bring about a fresh idea or choose a Khalifa for themselves until after the tribulation has subsided and matters have quieted down. Close quote. So notice they didn't say, jihad is fard al-ayn on everyone, we must fight now. No, that's not what they said. We must form a group, a jama'ah, so that we might bring about this noble endeavor. No, nothing was said like this. They said that you have no guarantee of safety under these regimes. What regimes? What the Turks have brought about through the abolition of the very place of Khilafah. And all the fitna that the Muslims are presently pleased with, because some of the Muslims were pleased with the new regimes that came about, because the Arabs were happy with Arab nationalism. The Palestinians that foisted that Kufr flag up, they were happy with the Palestinian nationalism, which is what that flag is based on. And Muslims think it's some type of Islamic jihadi call flag. The Egyptians were happy with the Arab Union, so were the Syrians, so were the Iraqis. See, and these things carried in. Some of the Bedouins were pleased with the nationalism that brought about the Kingdom of Arabia, and some of the Algerians were pleased to be part of France and then to break off and form a Francophone speaking country. All this stuff happened. So they said, you're not going to get it back. The Muslims have no guarantee of safety under these regimes. So you can't be protected. These regimes were telling you they can't protect you. Now we're sitting here after the fact because it's 1438. This is brought about in 1345. We're sitting here after the fact. But they're telling us now, you have no guarantee of safety under these regimes, nor can they bring about a fresh idea. So if you think, we'll do the democracy. If it doesn't work, we can always go back and go to Islam. In case it doesn't work, we'll try fascism, socialism. If it doesn't work, we'll just go back, right? We'll try it your way. We'll pray to your gods. We'll do Christianity for a couple of years. Then we'll go back to Islam. Alhamdulillah, we can come back, do Tawbah, can't we? Or choose a Khalifa for themselves. So the laity can't jump up and establish Khilafah until after the tribulation has subsided and the matters have quieted down, right? So the Imams go on to say, quote, this will come after devotion and reflection, knowledge of the matter, and investigation in all matters from all different sides to examine the utility of carrying out such an endeavor, close quote. So understand they're talking about Tawbah, sincere repentance, and these other things. The same thing they said in 898, the same thing they said in 656. It's the same thing. And after 4 years, they brought it back. After 656 and 660, they brought back the Khilafah because of repentance and devotion. Well, it's been over 80 years. Yeah, so what does that tell you about the general state of common men on the street? The Imams go on to say, quote, it is for these reasons that we see it necessary that this meeting be convened for the religion of Islam, calling to it the heads of all the Muslim nations to bring about what is necessary regarding the Khilafah of Islam in the city of Cairo under the leadership of Shaykh al-Islam and the lands of Egypt. Close quote. Now understand, what they've just done here is said, because there's no Khalifa, and because the Muslims are looking at someone, or some type of structure, okay, the Shaykh al-Islam they're talking about is the first name mentioned at the beginning, which is Sheikh Mahmoud Abdul Fadl al-Jizawi. So they put forward, out of all the Marja people, they put him forward and said, well, look to him as a figurehead, as a piece. One of the major Marja people. Because you don't have a Khalifa, okay, then it's necessary for the heads of all the Muslim nations to bring about what is necessary regarding the Khilafah of Islam in the city of Cairo, under the leadership of Shaykh al-Islam in the lands of Egypt. So the head during that time, when the people need leadership to look to someone as a head, okay, it's Shaykh al-Jizawi. It's him. He's the leader of the Ummah right now. It's him. Normally they rule as a panel. But when the Muslims are in disarray and they need to say, we need to put someone forward, they come together, they hold a convocation and say, okay, you are the leader of the Ummah that they can just look upon. Normally it's a panel, so the Ummah knows there's a panel, but if there's disarray where the Ummah needs to be able to say, is there one face we can look upon, one shepherd? Yes, it's him. Yes, it's this man here, Imam al-Jizawi. No, he did not have pale skin. No, he did not have blue or green eyes. He was extremely dark-skinned. I say this because we're living in an era in which pale skin is the deity of this age. Now, the Imams go on to say, quote, this meeting was called in this country after taking a look at the excellence of Egypt among the Muslim nations. And the meeting was completed in the month of Sha'ban in the year 1343 after the Hijrah. This would also correspond to the month of March in the year 1925 of the Christian era. We would like to publicly say a word of thanks for all of the Muslims that showed great jealousy for this faith regarding the matter of Khilafah and the manifest importance of this obligation. We would also further like to show gratitude to the nations which are not Muslim and the states throughout the world who have stayed far away from interference in the matters of the Khilafah of Islam, And we hope that these nations will understand that the issue of Khilafah is solely one to do with Islam and is not permissible that they and other nations should transgress their bounds and concern themselves with affairs other than those of their people. Close quote. What they're doing is they're thanking the Muslims that did not interfere. And we're going to talk about the Kafir nations as well that did not interfere, because there were some nations that did interfere, which we'll talk about very shortly. The Imams go on in conclusion. They say, quote, "It should be known that all of the Muslim world wants to live at peace with other nations, while at the same time preserving the rules of its true religion and its system, which is clear and innocent of any spirit of enmity. This is what we see in the religious obligation upon us to discharge to the Muslim world, not only in their places, but also to the world at large, so that all might clearly understand the affair with clarity." Cairo, Egypt, 9th of Shaban, 1342, corresponding to the 25th of March, AD 1923. Close quote. So you have then the reference here. Now the nations that are interfering that they're talking about, I'll go over this very quickly and briefly, because there are other prophecies that we must go to, and we'll need to break for Salat al-Maghrib soon, and we are only on page 2. So, the people that we want to look at who did interfere were Sir Mark Sykes and his colleagues, which brought about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Okay, I'm just going to read some extracts from the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It'd be interesting to note that Mark Sykes had to be exhumed recently, Sir Mark Sykes, because they wanted to do some checks on who he was related to and other things. And they found that he died a very excruciating death from ricin poisoning. They don't know how he got it. They don't know the things around it. But it's an excruciating pain to die from ricin poisoning. It's very slow, very painful. It feels as if your limbs are literally being pulled from your body. Kind of like what happened to the Muslim world under the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Not that these things bear any resemblance, right? So, Sykes-Picot Agreement from World War I Document Archive. These are declassified files. 15th and 16th of May, 1916. Sir Edward Grey to Paul Cambone on the 15th of May, 1916. I shall have the honor to reply fully in a further note to your Excellency's note on the 9th instant, relative to the creation of an Arab state. But I should meanwhile be grateful if your Excellency could assure me that in those regions which, under the condition recorded in that communication, become entirely French, or in which French interests are recognized as predominant, any existing British concessions, rights of navigation or development, and the rights and privileges of any British religious, scholastic, or medical institutions will be maintained. His Majesty's government are, of course, ready to give a reciprocal assurance in response to the British area. Number 2, Sir Edward Grey to Paul Cambone, 16th of May, 1916. I have the honor of acknowledging the receipt of your Excellency's note on the 9th instant, stating that the French government accept the limits of a future Arab state or confederation of states, and of those parts of Syria where French interests predominate, together with certain conditions attached thereto, such as they result from the recent discussion in London and Petrograd on the subject. We're hearing and listening to the dissolution of a united Muslim world into a series of 48 fiefdoms. This is what we are listening to, and it's being discussed in 9 separate meetings over dinner in London and Petrograd. I have the honor to inform your Excellency in reply that the acceptance of the whole project, this devastating thing that's being done, it's being called a project. Sometimes it's also referred to as the Great Game. This is a joke, that this is something fun. The destruction of an entire legal system and the devastation of 48 majority countries, something to do, it's fun. Do you understand the type of sick people that you're dealing with? Yet, some of the slaves of Allah want to wear wigs. Some of them want to dress like them and be like them. And these sick people have written this. Remember, these are the people that go to the most high up in schools. These royal families and these noble people that they get called. They go to the plays and they watch Shakespeare and they have their monocle. Or whatever the other things they do, they have violin played while they eat their dinner. These people. I have the honor to inform Your Excellency in reply that the acceptance of the whole project as it now stands will involve the abdication of considerable British interests. But, since His Majesty's government recognized the advantage of the general cause of the Allies entailed in producing a more favorable internal political situation in Turkey, which is a country they innovated and brought about around this time, they are ready to accept the arrangement now arrived at, provided that the cooperation of the Arabs is secured, and that the Arabs fulfill the conditions and obtain the towns of Homs, Hama, Damascus, and Aleppo. So there are Arab traitors who are helping in this dissolution by raiding Homs, Hama, Damascus, and Aleppo. It is accordingly understood between the French and British governments, 1, that France and Great Britain are prepared to recognize and protect an independent Arab state, or a confederation of Arab states, in areas A and B marked on the annexed map, under the suzerainty of an Arab chief. That in Area A, France, and in Area B, Great Britain, shall have priority of right of enterprise and local loans. That in Area A, France, and in Area B, Great Britain, shall alone supply advisors of foreign functionaries at the request of Arab state or confederation of Arab states. Number 2, that in the blue area, France, and in the red area, Great Britain, shall be allowed to establish such direct and indirect administration or control as they desire, and as they may think fit to arrange with the Arab state of confederation of Arab states. Number 3, that in the brown area shall be established an international administration, the form of which is to be decided upon by the consultation with Russia, and subsequently in consultation with other allies, and the representatives of the Sharif of Mecca. Number 4, that Great Britain be accorded, number 1, the ports of Haifa and Acre. Do you see how they're just speaking very nonchalantly about whole areas where people live? There's no thought about where these people live and who they are. They'll just be accorded the ports of Haifa and Acre, guarantee of given supply of water from the Tigris and Euphrates in Area A for Area B. His Majesty's government, on their part, undertake that they will at no time enter into negotiations for the secession of Cyprus or any third power without the previous consent of the French government. So Cyprus is not Cyprus, it's part of the French government. Even though it's been part of the Muslim world for the better part of 1,300 years, it's French now. Number 5, that Alexandretta shall be a free port as regards to the trade of the British Empire, and that there shall be no discrimination in port charges or facilities as regards British shipping and British goods. That means for free. We're coming in, we're getting free. We don't have to pay anything. We're just taking control of your areas, and we don't pay anything. We don't pay for shipping in, we don't pay for shipping out. We run everything. You bow to us. We run everything. That's what's being said. 48 countries devastated. I just don't understand why the Muslim world's in such disarray today. You want to understand why? Read the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Let me come to England, to all the shires here, and devastate it and break it up into tiny emir states, and I put you guys as emirs over each state. Run it how you like. Some of them will be speaking Spanish, some will be speaking other languages, different laws will be in effect. Right? So they continue on by saying that there shall be freedom of transit for British goods through Alexandretta and by railway through the blue area, whether these goods are intended for or originate in the red area, or B area, or area A. And there shall be no discrimination, direct or indirect, against British goods on any railway or against British goods or ships at any port serving the areas mentioned. We have free movement through all of your lands. We're building a railway through to get stuff through. You can't stop us. We have free movement through everywhere where you live. We can do what we want to do. Number 6, that in Area A, the Baghdad Railway, shall not be extended southwards beyond Mosul, and in Area B northwards beyond Samarra until a railway connecting Baghdad with Aleppo via the Euphrates Valley has been completed, and then only with the concurrence of the two governments. So you can't even build anything in your own country, your own railways. Nope, we're going to build it. Unless France and Britain agree that you can have a railroad, you can't have one. And our stuff is moving through free. Number 7, that Great Britain has the right to build, administer, and be sole owner of a railway connecting Haifa with Area B, and shall have a perpetual right to transport troops, such a line at all times. So England owns all the railways. All the railways that go through. So not only are we coming in here and getting free stuff, we own all the railways. So the transportation, the means of transportation, the goods, the sale of goods, the buying of goods is all controlled by us. Now, no one was consulted. This was just drawn up. It is to be understood by both governments that this railway is to facilitate the connection of Baghdad with Haifa by rail. And it is further understood that if the engineering difficulties and expense entailed by keeping this connecting line in the Brown area only make the project unfeasible, that the French government shall be prepared to consider that the line in question may also traverse the polygon, Benayas Case, Marib, Salkab, Tel, Otadas Mesme before reaching Area B. Number 8. For a period of 20 years, the existing Turkish customs tariff shall remain in force throughout the whole of the blue and red areas, as well as areas A and B. Well, that's kind of them. So the infidelic government that was formed will give you guys a 20-year lease. Do what you want, whatever charges you want. But once we finish, we're taking what you got, what you saved up, and what everyone else has got. And no increase in the rates of duty or conversion from ad valorem to specific rates shall be made except by agreement between the two powers. There shall be no interior customs barriers between any of the aforementioned areas. No borders, no border controls. No interior customs barriers, no border controls. You can't even check there's trains going through your country. You can't even check them. Could you imagine if your door was unlocked and I just walked through your house, just walking through your house. Walked all the way through your house, women uncovered, kids running around. I open the door to your bathroom, whoops, wrong room. Keep walking, come through the kitchen, bite an apple without washing it, don't say the basmala, nothing. Get all the way to the back of the house, kick the dog, slap the cat, open the door and walk out. There's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do. Number 9. It shall be agreed that the French government will at no time enter into any negotiations for the cessation, the cession of their rights, and will not cede such rights in the blue area to any third power, except the Arab state or confederations of Arab states without the previous agreement of His Majesty's government, who on their part will give a similar undertaking to the French government regarding the red area. Number 10. The British and French governments, as the protectors of the Arab state, shall agree that they will not themselves acquire and will not consent to a third power requiring territorial possessions in the Arabian Peninsula, nor consent to a third power installing a naval base, either on the East Coast or on the islands of the Red Sea. Now, this treaty is still in effect. So you want to understand why the Al Saud family are hamstrung. This is still in effect. They can't do anything. They can't do anything. They said, we won't allow a third power to come in here. It's just us. This, however, shall not prevent such adjustment of the Aden frontier as may be necessary in consequence of recent Turkish aggression. Meaning since the government's collapsed and all hell's breaking loose, these Turkish guys are running around, there may be some interruption to treaties, there may be some breakage or what have you, but we understand this happens. All right? I'm almost coming to the end of it. I only have a little bit left. Number 11. The negotiations with the Arabs as to the boundaries of the Arab state or confederation of Arab states shall be continued through the same channel as heretofore on behalf of the two powers. Number 12. It is agreed that measures to control the importation of arms into the Arab territories will be considered by the two governments. So we don't want you guys getting guns. Because if anybody gets a hold of this treaty and can put 2 and 2 together, and they get guns. It is agreed that measures to control the importation of arms into the Arab territories will be considered. We do want to know whether we should allow guns to run through here. Because lo and behold, that some dark, swarthy, curly-haired Arab gets a hold of this, and then also has access to weaponry, and tries to set the record straight on us. Woe be that anyone does that. I have further the honor to state that, in order to make the agreement complete, His Majesty's government are proposing to the Russian government to exchange notes analogous to those exchanged by the latter and Your Excellency's government on the 26th of April last. So you think that, oh, well, Russia could be a possible ally for the Muslim world. You think? You think? Copies of these notes will be communicated to Your Excellency as soon as exchanged. I would also venture to remind Your Excellency that the conclusion of present agreement raises, for practical consideration, the question of the claims of Italy to a share in any portion of rearrangement of Turkey in Asia. Whoa. The Italians are trying to take a bite out of these newly created Turkish peoples in the new country of Turkey? Well, yes, the question of the claims of Italy to a share in any portion or rearrangement of Turkey in Asia, as formulated in Article 9 of the agreement on the 26th of April 1915 between Italy and the Allies. We need an answer to this question. Is Italy going to get a bite or aren't they? His Majesty's government further considered that the Japanese government should be informed of the arrangement now concluded. Japanese have gotten in on the act. Do you understand this hadith that all the nations will gather together like diners come? It's everybody. Other than those who these imams said who didn't interfere. Anyone not mentioned in here that's not interfering, they're the people that interfere. So if you get an opportunity, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. These guys died horrible deaths. Not like it's anything to do with what they did, right? So what we will do, inshallah, is we will now close to pray Salat al-Maghrib on a more somber mood. And inshallah, when we return, we will carry on with the rest of our text of the remaining prophecies. I say here, أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين. I'm sure they did not. Sit. Hey, man. That's messed up. Oh, man.
Well, I've been taught from a young age that your shoes are like you know how many times I asked Shaikh about a question about the whole. I've recorded it, so when I go over that, I'm sometimes you'll see I've got it in headphones, so in my house, in my room, I'll be shouting. It's like, oh, you asked that question already, and then it goes silent again. Somebody comes trying to read it. You okay? I was like, no, I'm just. What's that, like 6, 7 times? Yeah, because it's just like, and then what about then he got a bit no, you don't say I'm like, what about if it's breakdown?
Hence, dirt. Dirt, dirty. Okay. All right. So inshallah, I'll begin again. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah. Before we took our break for Salat al-Maghrib, we were going to begin the destruction of Al-Madinah and wars with the Khawarij. Okay, this prophecy, 9AH, but its fulfillment was 1210 onwards. This is concurrent prophecy. So the ahadith that we're going through, we have heard these ahadith before, but they are concurrent, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to those gathered around him, the people of Al-Madinah shall be expelled from it. Some of the people said, who shall expel them from it? He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, evil rulers. This is collected by Abu Bakr ibn Abi Shayba in his Musannaf. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one day ascended Mount Uhud and faced Al-Madinah and said, woe be to what comes to it, a city that shall drive its inhabitants out, just as you see. This is collected by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and Al-Musnad, sound narrators. We have another hadith in which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam warned, there shall come upon the people of Al-Madinah a matter that shall scare them so that they abandon the city. It shall lay bare everything else, and the same thing shall come to At-Taif, leaving nothing remaining. This will be the case until the foxes shall burrow in the markets and leave nothing behind. It was further said by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Al-Madinah shall be abandoned by you according to the best it had until the dog and the wolf enter it, and some of the pillars of the masjid shall be urinated upon by these animals. Imam Ahmed Zaini Dahlan declared about these ahadith in history, quote, in the month of Safar in the year 1210, our master As-Sharif Ghalib prepared a group from his armies and placed over them as their leader As-Sayyid Nasir ibn Sulaiman, and commanded him to head out and stop the confederacy of tribes that had entered into the religion of Ibn Saud. He moved against them and removed them from many places. Tribes such as Athumamiyya, but not the entire clan of Roq. As-Sayyid Nasir ibn Sulaiman killed them down to a man, took the camels that they had stolen, and then returned back to Mecca safely. In his seventh incursion on Rabi' al-Thani in the year 1210, our master Al-Ghalib raised another army and put over them As-Sayyid Fuhayd ibn Abdullah ibn Sa'id, and commanded him to head out against a group of the followers of Ibn Saud. He first moved against them and those sent. There were many tribes with them, and great trouble resulted. When he came to the place of Ranya, he moved against the Banu Hajir at the head of Shabnan. He was overtaken while at the place, and came into the presence of 3 spies that had been sent by Hadi ibn Qurmulah. As-Sayyid Fuhayd took the 3 spies, killed 2 of them, and told the third to tell him where the reinforcements were. The third one told him, fearing that he would be killed. As-Sayyid Fuhayd freed that man and traveled on towards the location he was meant to reach. On the second day, he reached the place where Hadi ibn Qurmulah was located. Ibn Qurmulah was overrun, and 100 people were killed from his troops, and he was beaten back. When he moved back further, he headed out and sought refuge in the Qahtan group under the authority of Ibn Qayhan. He had many camels with him, and as Sayyid Fuhayd moved against him and took the camels that had been stolen, killing every soldier except who had fled. One of the agreed upon strange things was that when Ibn Qurmulah had reached Ibn Shudayr, who was from the Sheikhs of the Qahtan and one of the warriors of the desert Arabs, he was able to get to Ibn Qayhan, one of the followers of Ibn Saud. When the battle came, As-Sayyid Fuhayd killed 45 people from his group and took hold of Ibn Shudayr and what he had with him of the camels that were taken. The fortresses were overrun, and he had 20 riders to go against them. There were 7 of the enemy left, and they were overwhelmed and taken to Ranya. He commanded for them to have their supply lines cut, and then headed to Al-Fursha, and then Turba, and then at Taif. When this came to pass, As-Sharif Ghalib at the time was in Taif. The 8th incursion came on the 11th of Shawwal, 1210. As-Sharif Ghalib prepared an army and placed over them his brother, As-Sayyid Abdul Mu'in. He marched out and took whoever was with him and made it to Buraim. But it took him until Dhul Qa'dah, and many tribes came out to resist him. He sent out spies, and they found many of the desert Arabs who had not heard of the coming march from Mecca. So they found at the area of Turba a man in command, named As-Sayyid Sa'ad ibn Armata. Our master, As-Sharif Ghalib, asked permission for them to return, and it was granted. They returned and found that he was among the Ukhaydir, and both As-Sayyid Abdul Ma'in and As-Sharif Ghalib headed to Taif, and then to Mecca on Dhul Hijjah of the same year. On the 9th incursion, on the night of the 24th of Dhul Hijjah in the year 1210, As-Sharif Ghalib raised a large army and put over them as leader As-Sayyid Nasir ibn Sulaiman, and they marched out until they reached Maran. Many tribes marched out to them, and the battle ensued at a place called Afir. Then it carried on at Ash-Shammas. The desert Arabs in the area increased their number, and the Wahhabi army marched through their defenses. The Wahhabi army had with them Ibn Rabi'an, Hadi ibn Qurmala, and there was much hatred and enmity between the Wahhabi army and that of the Sharif. There was a mighty battle, and many were killed from both sides. Some 43 people were killed from the troop of Al-Sharif, while the Wahhabi group took many ways of exit through the Bedouins to escape capture. As Sayyid Nasr ibn Sulaiman returned with his troop to Mecca. The 10th incursion took place on the 3rd of Rabi' al-Akhir, 1211. Our master, Al-Sharif Ghalib, raised an army and put in charge of it as Sayyid Fuhayd ibn Abdullah ibn Sa'id. He headed out with his group and moved from At-Ta'if to Al-Ukhaydir, then to Ratba. A small troop was sent from the army to scout the area at Al-Kharma, and their leader was as Sayyid Hassan ibn Ghalib. They marched against the troops of Al-Kharma, and some of them were killed. As Sayyid reached back to Raqba, and tribes from Qahtan and Al-Baqum came. As Sayyid Hassan marched out with those who were with him, and they marched against a people with them of war that had entered into the Wahhabi religion, and took 50 camels that they had in turn taken. Then they traveled to a place known as Rughin Ni'am and encountered Al-Hujaylani. He was the emir of the Kharaj and had a large group with him as an army from the Multayr and others. There was a large battle between his Sayyid Hassan and the Wahhabi group, and many on both sides were killed. As Sayyid Fuhayd, who had his larger body, then headed to an area called Al-Hanakiyya, which was a village near Al-Madinah the Radiant. Many of the tribes of war came, and a delegation came out to them from the Banu Hussein of the As-Suwaydiqiyya. They then headed to a place called Salba, and they marched against Hadi ibn Qurmala at a place called Al-Baqarah. As Sayyid Fuhayd met the troops of the Wahhabi group and found them, and a large amount of deaths resulted. He took the horses of Ibn Qurmala as well as the camels and then returned to Salba and decided to march out another time. The larger army did not allow this and told him to head back to Mecca, which he promptly did. On the 11th incursion, after Sayyid Fuhayd arrived back at Mecca, our master, Al-Sharif Ghalib, raised another army and told it to return, and that they should make a move against the Ranya people. They moved out and came to the location where they met the Wahhabi people. There was a huge fight that happened between them. When the Wahhabi were stopped, they took whatever they had as war treasure, burned their homes, and headed out to a location known as Janina. They came to the people and asked questions, while they also dispersed spies to find out any other people planning attacks against them. The spies returned and informed them that the Wahhabi people had traveled and were far away, and none of them returned. As Sayyid Fuhayd returned to Ranya, then Turba, and then Mecca. This would be the same year that as Sayyid Abdul Aziz ibn Masa'id would die, the brother of Al-Sharif Ghalib. His death was the 22nd of Jumad al-Ula, 1211. He was buried under the dome of the grave of As-Sayyida Khadija, the same place where his brother Al-Sharif Surur was buried. In the month of Ramadan, Al-Sharif Ghalib himself drew up an army to stand against the Banu Amr and Liqa as they were robbing people and cutting off the pathways. 3 men were killed from the Banu Amr, 4 of their men of infantry. Al-Sharif next headed to Jeddah, then Mecca. This was outside of the battles that he had between Al-Sharif and the Wahhabi group. We would like to mention the fire that happened in the house of the sons of Al-Sharif Surur in the year 1212. This was on the 17th of Muharram 1212, and the fire started at the Qutbi gate of the children of Al-Sharif Surur. The fire burned everything in the location, including household furnishings. The damage to this site has remained up until this day of ours. In the year 1212, our master Al-Sharif sent the Shaikh Ahmed Turki to the High Court in order to seek assistance and help in repelling the menace of the Wahhabiyah. They did not answer his call and did not give any assistance, believing the matter was less than it was in reality. He then realized that they would have to defend against them alone. On the 12th incursion, on the 25th of Muharram, 1212, our master Al-Sharif Ghalib rose an army and put as head over them as Sayyid Fuhair ibn Abdullah ibn Sa'id. He moved against a people that had entered into the Wahhabi religion at the place of Ariq al-Dasam. He defeated them and took what they possessed of camels and returned to Mecca safely. On the 13th incursion, on the 25th of Rabi' al-Thani, 1212, our master Sharif Ghalib raised an army and put under its control Mubarak ibn Muhammad ibn Masa'id ibn Sa'id. He marched against the newly converted Wahhabi people that were in a place called Al-A'lam. He took their horses and camels and then headed out to face down 45 Wahhabi soldiers. When he took them prisoner, he took back what they had taken as wealth from Al-Madinah the Radiant, then chained them and placed them in irons. After that, he took statements from them with conviction and killed all the prisoners. He headed back, and news of his return reached Ash-Sharif, but he did not want the army to return and told them to wait until the end of the month of Jumad al-Ula. A new leader was placed over the army by the name of As-Sayyid Sa'ad ibn Sa'id Armata. On the 14th incursion, As-Sayyid Sa'ad came and reached the place where he faced Mubarak ibn Muhammad ibn Salba with those armies. They marched out and took offensive action at Maran and sent out assistants and spies to find out the numbers they were facing. The assistants and spies returned and informed them that the Wahhabi people had amassed a large following and were now preparing to face them. As-Sayyid Sa'ad wanted to return to Mecca but was forbidden from doing so by our master Ash-Sharif Ghalib, and he marched out as well. Close quote. What these all incursions are, as the Imam is saying, other than the one, these are incursions involving them having to go against Salafiyya to fight against what they're calling Wahhabiyya. All these incursions, that's what all this is these wars. And every time you see this word as Sharif or as Sayyid, this is the household of the Prophet ﷺ. So they're not just sitting back and being honored and sitting, no, they're actually fighting in armies. So they have to go out and do these fights. Every time they're taking care of the matters to do with the sacred Kaaba and the Masjid al-Haram, an incident occurs and they have to march out and take care of it. So the Imam continues on by saying, quote, the 15th incursion was the 15th war and is known as the War of Al-Kharma, which had a great war. This was attended by our master Ash-Sharif Ghalib himself, and this occurred the 11th of Sha'ban, 1212. Our master Ash-Sharif amassed a large men of champions and spent much wealth that was stacked like the mountains. He brought out the wealth, and he had the masters and heads of war come out with him. They went out and reached Wadi al-Uqayq. The tribes came from every place until they reached Marran, and the delegation approached from As-Sayyid Mubarak ibn Muhammad and As-Sayyid ibn Armata. They traveled to Al-Muwayh and Al-Baqarah and marched against the people of Qahtan and took their reinforcements. Next, the army from Mecca marched against Ibn Qurmula in Al-Qunsuliyah and killed many of the Wahhabi people. Ibn Qurmula fled after the defeat, and As-Sharif returned to Ranya and fought against them, cutting their date palms, destroying them, and the people obeyed him in his decrees. They sought peace, and he allowed them, and they agreed to it. He next headed to Baysha and set out rules for their group to listen. Others fled, and they burned their castles. He then stayed in Ratba for a period of time before setting out to Al-Kharma. He remained there, but none remained that could oppose him. He resided at the place for a number of days. On one of the days, he sent word of a noble man of Al-Ibadallah named Lu'ay that informed him of the impending arrival of the Wahhabiyya, like the rushing of river waters and rodents scurrying in the dirt. As-Sharif did not initially believe him and thought that the man must be following some group out of fear. A day or two passed until the armies referred came and appeared as the man had said. They were huge, and a great war occurred between the Wahhabi forces and those of As-Sharif. Many were killed to the point that it reached a few thousand from both sides. But that day the victory went to the Wahhabi army. More than 40 of the Sharif people had been killed, and our master As-Sharif made his way back to Mecca and entered there on the 3rd of Dhul-Qa'dah. Then, Jumad al-Ula 1213, news came of the Ottoman government declaring that they shore up their defenses to protect themselves from the onslaught of the French after they had taken Egypt. A garrison was put together, and the news was read out in Mecca and Al-Madinah. The people were ordered to prepare strong defenses, and those who did not know were told to learn the art of war and defense. The weapons were kept by the people, and the walling of Jeddah was completed and maintained. The people were well prepared for a French invasion, but Allah spared the believers that fight. We would like to mention here the truce that was agreed on Jumad al-Ula 1213. The truce was signed between our master, Ash-Sharif Ghalib, and Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad ibn Saud, after a number of settlements and points of correspondence were exchanged between them. The boundaries of his authority and his obedience held by the tribes which were under the authority of our master Ash-Sharif were mentioned. The same thing was concluded regarding the allegiance to Ash-Sharif by the tribes around Mecca, Al-Madinah, Al-Ta'if, the tribes of Sa'ad, Nasira, Bujayla, Ghamida, Zahran, Al-Makhwa, Bariq, and other than that. In the year 1214, Sa'ud ibn Abdul Aziz and those with him made Hajj. They gathered together and would meet our master Ash-Sharif in a tent, and the terms of agreement were hashed out. This was the 28th of Al-Hajj, 1214. Sa'ud and those with him then traveled out and made Hajj again in the year 1215, and Sa'ud came to see our master Ash-Sharif with a gift that was brought. The historical narrative of the people of Ta'if and what befell them with the Wahhabiyah. The Al-Buwayhat came out expecting that they would have peace and safety from Uthman and Salim, the two sons of Shabakan. They both shot him with hot lead from one of the minarets in front of one of the people of Ta'if. His death came to pass, and once the Wahhabiyah sect knew this, they moved against the walls in one move with battering rams, and no one had the power to fight them or repel their advance. A group of the people of Ta'if beforehand did try to come out, but they were seen, and the Wahhabiyah chopped them down, and no one other than a small body was safe from them. When they entered Ta'if, they killed the people in mass, neither sparing the old or the young, the leader or the led, the noble or the baseborn. The killing was such that the very mother with the baby at her breast was killed along with the child. They came to the houses and expelled their contents, people and all, killing and looting. When they found a group learning the Quran, they would kill them down to the last man, and the house would be desolate. They headed out to the shops and masjids, killing whoever was there. They killed men in the masjid, whether they were bowing, prostrating in the prayer. The killing was such that they put an end to these creations of Allah. Woe be to these people from the vengeance of the forceful one who owns the skies. None remained from the people of Ta'if except a small group, perhaps no more than 20 persons. They took to the houses of fatwa and filled them with bullets. Close quote. What that means is the houses of fatwa, they filled them with bullets, they machine gun, they minigun them. So these people that are there, they got miniguns. Now, where would they get miniguns from? Who had miniguns? The British had miniguns. So the houses of fatwa where the sheikhs were, where they would pass their fatwas, they went and they minigunned them. Killed everybody in there. The Imam goes on to say, quote, there were mushafs and texts that had been authored in abundance, manuscripts of Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and other books of hadith, as well as books of fiqh, grammar, and other sciences. These had been strewn on the floor, and they were tread underfoot for days, without anyone being able to lift a single page and save it from disrespect and being tread upon. Close quote. Now, Imam Zaini Dahlan, Ahmad Zaini Dahlan, rahimahullah, he goes on to mention Mecca and Al-Madinah and what happened. He says, quote, the besiegement became so severe and widespread that the people ate the dogs and dead bodies. This is what then led to Ash-Sharif Ghalib concluding some type of truce. The Wahhabiyah would enter there in the year 1220. Close quote. So this is after starving out the Meccans and the Medanese until they ate the dogs in that city. Yes, they had dogs in Al-Madinah. Yes, there were dogs in Mecca. Not anymore, because they ate them all. Because they were besieged. So they ate the dogs and the dead carcasses of people because they cut off their supply lines. All right, so this has been mentioned in Khulasatul Kalam fi Bayan Umara al-Balad al-Haram, pages 349 to 373, and Ad-Durra Saniya fi Rad' al-Wahhabiyya, pages 49 to 51. The next prophecy we have is the return of the children of Israel to Sham and wars with them. This was 9AH as prophecy. Its fulfillment was 1367 and 1368 and onwards. Okay, so we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioning in the Quran, He is the one who expelled those who rejected faith from the people of the book from their homes to the first gathering. You did not think that they would leave, and they thought that they would hamper people using their castles as protection from Allah. Surah Al-Hashr, the 59th surah, ayat 1 to 2. Imam al-Baghawi, who died 516, Ibn Atiyah, who died 541, Ibn al-Jawzi, who died 597, and Ibn Kathir, who died 774, all quoted the ayah and then gave the following ahadith below. As Zuhri narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said to the Banu Nadir tribe, leave from this location. They said to him, where shall we go? He ﷺ said, to the land of the first gathering. All the above scholars state that the first gathering is referring to the land of Sham and its environs around Jerusalem. Imam Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, who died in 1393, rahimahullah, further states, quote, the first gathering is a reference to where groups are brought together. This does not negate their heading out to the lands of Sham. The Prophet ﷺ said, the hour shall not be established until you fight the Jews. A rock will say, slave of Allah, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come here and kill him. This is collected by Imam al-Bukhari in Al-Jami' al-Sahih. Close quote. So understand that these things are very tied together. Now it needs to be understood. These ahadith are under the book of Fitan, Kitab al-Fitan, the book of tribulation, all the books of hadith that they appear in. Why? Because the Muslims that are looking at these ahadith in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the children of Israel don't have a standing army. So it says, the hour shall not be established until you fight the Jews. Like, how would we fight them? They don't have a standing army. They don't have the strength to be fought. So how are they going to be fought? And then another hadith in the Sahih of Muslim mentions that the tree that will tell the location will be the gharqad, the box thorn. But the gharqad, that box thorn, grows in Sham. It doesn't grow in Mecca. It grows in Sham. So a lot of the companions were like, well, what does this mean? So there's all these little indicators. But specifically, ayat 1 to 2 of Surah Al-Hashr mentioned the first gathering place. All the scholars are agreed the first gathering place is Sham. So who began sending the exiles of the Israelites back to Sham? The Prophet ﷺ did. He sent them back. He began this process, which would culminate in what we'd see in 1367 or 1368, which on the pagan era is 1948. But he began this process of the exiles, these people of this religion going back, the children of Israel going back, the Jews going back. Now, Imam al-Qurtubi, who died 671, he says the following of these ayat and ahadith. He says, quote, there are 4 types of gatherings after exile. There shall be 2 in the earthly life and 2 in the hereafter. That which is mentioned in Surah Al-Hashr is the gathering of the Jews to Sham, while the second is that mentioned in the signs of the end of time as well. Close quote. So this is taken from Al-Qurtubi's commentary and discussion. It's mentioned in Adwa al-Bayan fi Idah al-Quran bil-Quran, volume 8, pages 21 to 22, as well as the ruling of Imam Yusuf al-Qaddumi, rahimahullah, who he mentioned this. Imam Yusuf al-Qaddumi discussed the children of Israel coming back to the land, how that fulfills prophecy, the dangers it has, how they took over the place called Maqam al-Buraq, which is the standing place of the Buraq, which they call the Wailing Wall. Okay. Al-Barzanji discussed this, pages 273 to 274. Now, we have people scattered in the earth. All right, this prophecy was made 9 AH. Its fulfillment was 1367, 1368, and onwards. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anh narrated when Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anhu asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he became Muslim about the first sign of the hour. The first signs of the hour. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, among the first signs of the hour is that there shall be a fire that gathers the people from the east to the west. Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu narrated an attributable hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the people of the east shall have a fire brought, and it shall gather them to the west, and they shall be brought there and reside. Imam Al-Hajj al-Asqalani, who died 892, radiallahu anhu, said the following: the people leaving from Aden does not negate the people being gathered from the east to the west, as the beginning of it was when the people when the people started leaving from Aden. When they left from there, this was the sign that it would go into the earth and all together in 8 days. It can also be said that the intent of the general gathering is not referring to just the east to the west, but it means that people will be gathered from the east and the west, or that they will be spread to all different points after the people of the east will initially be gathered from their place and settled in many other places. Close quote. This is mentioned by Al-Barzanji, pages 273 to 274 of his work. So what this is talking about then is people being gathered. He said it started in Aden, meaning people in Yemen leaving in big numbers to go to different places. Some of them would go to Malaysia and Indonesia. That's the source of Islam for them. The people that came to them were Arabs from Yemen. The Malaysians and Indonesians, that's how they got the Sumatrans, the Javans, that's how the deen came to them, is through the Yemenis. And then the Yemenis went to other places as well. Now we've got 1368 down here because of the fact that massive immigration of Muslims being pushed. There was a major push that happened that Imam Yusuf al-Qadumi and others referred to. A massive push where Muslims started fleeing westward from their normal locations. And there started this massive thing of people immigrating because you had the advent of cars and trains. So people were now moving with great speed to all these different places. So Imams al-Shanqiti, Yusuf al-Qadumi, and others say that this is also being referred to. It's a continuation of this hadith because the people are continually moving throughout the earth, immigrating in bigger numbers. People that normally would never meet each other in life can now meet. If you went to London, let's say you lived in Northern California and you wanted to go to Southern California, that would take you a week to get there and then a week back. Now it's a few hours on the freeway. People are connected. The speed of travel has changed. If you were from one part of China, you might never know anybody from the other side of China ever because you never went anywhere else. Or you couldn't go that far. With trains, you were able to travel these massive distances now that you never could do before. Now, we have another prophecy. This is the prophecy of a man's hip speaking to him. Date was 9 AH. Prophecy's completion is 1319 AH. It was narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. A wolf came to the shepherd of sheep and took from the flock one sheep. The shepherd chased down the wolf with his crook and fought against him until he freed the sheep from the jaws of the wolf. The wolf sat on his hind legs upright, looking forward, and said, I have only intended to take the sustenance that Allah has ordained for me. I took it, and here you are taking it away from me. The shepherd said, Glory be to Allah, a wolf that speaks. The wolf responded, What is more wondrous than this is a man between two oases in the date palms, who shall inform you of what has passed and what shall be after you. The man at that time was a Jew who came to the Prophet ﷺ and informed him of what had happened. The shepherd then became Muslim, and the Prophet ﷺ confirmed what he had said and then said to him, Indeed, there shall be signs that announce the hour. A time will come in which a man will come out of his house and not return until his sandal speaks to him, his hip speaks to him, and gives him an account of what his family did while he was out. This is collected by Imams Abdul Razak al-San'ani in Al-Musannaf, volume 11, pages 230, 231, and Al-Bukhari and Al-Jami' al-Sahih. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared, By the one in whose hand is my soul, the hour shall not come until the beasts speak to men. The man has the end of his clothing speak to him, or the strap of his sandal speaks to him, and his thigh informs him of what happened with his family after he left. This is collected by Imams at-Tirmidhi and Jami' al-Sunan, Ibn Hibban in his Sahih, volume 14, pages 418 to 419. Imams Abdul Qadir al-Badran, who died 1346, Imam Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, who died 1393, and others, radiallahu anhum ajma'een, all state these ahadith are taken as they are and have given rulings regarding the phonograph and all similar technological advancements. So these are to do with major technological advancements. So these hadith are taken as they are, meaning that it's not metaphorical, it's something that's going to happen. And we don't have to go into as much detail as they did. That's why I didn't mention a lot of it. Because you can see in your own lives when your hip talks to you, when your sandal talks to you, when the edge of your clothing, how something's on there. Just now, we're in the middle of a class and someone's watch is talking to them. In the middle of this class, we're sitting here talking. All of a sudden, someone's watch is clicking and talking to him. Telling him what? The time. Why is the time important? Well, for whatever reason, he needs to be at whatever location he's going to be at. So his watch is talking to him. His hip is talking to him. Some of you, when you go running, your arm talks to you. Tells you that you need to go pick up flour. Or that we just ran out of the last milk. Your hip is talking to you. Now, next prophecy is automobiles, airplanes, and other motorized transport. Prophecy was 9AH. The fulfillment is 1306 onwards. We have an ayah in the Quran where Allah the Exalted has said, "And in the cattle he has created them for you. And the cattle are warmth in the form of clothing and numerous benefits. And some of them you eat. And there is also in the cattle beauty for you when you bring them home in the evening, and as you lead them forth to the pasture in the morning. The cattle carry your burdens to a land that you could not reach except with great trouble to yourselves. Indeed, your Lord is benevolent, compassionate. He created horses, mules, and donkeys for you to ride, and as an adornment. And he also created other things such as these, of which you have no knowledge." Surah Al-Nahl, the 16th surah, ayat 5 to 8. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu also narrated that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I swear by Allah, indeed the son of Maryam shall descend as a just judge over you all. He shall break the cross, put an end to the pig, and end the jizya. You will at the time leave camels as a means of transportation, and they shall not be ridden as beforehand. Malice, hatred, and envy shall go away, and the people will have abundant wealth in which they will go around to give it out, but no one will accept it." This is collected by Imam Muslim in Al-Jami' al-Sahih. Imam Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti, rahimahullah, said the following regarding the aforementioned texts, quote, "The Lord, mighty and majestic, has mentioned these ayat that he creates what those being spoken to at the revelation do not know at the time of revelation. He has brought these things to be and expressed that people shall have means of transportation that are different, but he did not explicitly say which types they would be. But the semblance of mentioning that is that the things that are known of as means of transportation shall be added to with things that were not known beforehand. This is witnessed in the favoring of Allah on his slaves with means of transportation that were not known at the time of the revelation of the ayat, such as planes and ships, trains and automobiles. This is further strengthened by what was indicated in an authentic hadith by the Prophet ﷺ. This is a clear witness in an authentic hadith. It is also an oath by the Prophet ﷺ that camels will be left as a means of transportation and not ridden as before. This can be seen today, as people are independent of them by using other means of transportation. This hadith possesses a great miracle that shows the authenticity of his prophethood ﷺ, and his miracles are more than can be counted in any one moment. Close quote. This is taken from Adwa al-Bayan fi Idah al-Quran bil-Quran, volume 3, pages 165 to 167. So here we have, again, different means of transportation and things going on. This has come to pass. We then have the prophecy of Iraq, Sham, and Egypt and the sanctions. This was made 9 AH. The fulfillment was 650 to 1411 and onwards. It is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Iraq shall be prevented from reaching its dirhams and its dry food measure amounts. Sham shall be prevented from reaching its dry food measure amounts and its dinars. Egypt shall be prevented from reaching its dry food measure amounts and its dinars. What you were promised shall come from where you began. What you were promised shall come from where you began. What you were promised shall come from where you began." This is collected by Muslim in Al-Jami' al-Sahih. Imam Yahya Nawawi, rahimahullah, who died 676 Hijri, he said the following of this hadith. Quote, "There are two well-known ways of understanding the hadith. Iraq shall be prevented from reaching its dirhams and other nations. Number one, due to their becoming Muslim and the ruling of jizya will no longer be binding upon them. This has already come to be the case. And number two, which is the most popular understanding, is that the non-Arabs and Byzantines will take control over the lands in the end of time. These same people will then prevent the things mentioned in the hadith from reaching the Muslims." This was already narrated by Muslim in a supporting hadith in pages given from Jabir, in which he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "A time will come in which no dry measure of food will come to Iraq, Sham, and Egypt." We said, from what way is that possible? Who will prevent it from reaching them? The Prophet ﷺ said, it will be the non-Arabs that will do this, as they will prevent it from reaching them. Thus he mentioned the non-Arabs and Byzantines preventing that in Iraq and Sham. This has already come to pass in our time regarding Iraq, and it is still in effect now. It was said by someone that the hadith means that the people of Iraq will apostate in the end of time, and they will prevent what is compulsory of the zakat being collected, and other matters as well. It has also been claimed that the hadith is referring to the unbelievers who are due to pay the jizya, obtaining a type of power in which in the end of time they refuse to pay the jizya, the kharaj, and discharge other affairs. The expression, what you were promised shall come from where you began, carries the same meaning as the hadith in the same collection. Islam began as something strange, and it shall return just as it began. Close quote. This is taken from Sahih Muslim Sharh al-Nawawi, volume 18, pages 20 to 21. I say all that to say, أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين ولا إله إلا الله. So again, this is the last of the ahadith on the signs that have been fulfilled. Now someone may ask on the back of this, because there's an ayah in the Quran regarding where Allah the Exalted says in Surah Al-Rahman that men and jinn, O gathering of men and jinn, if you're able to pierce through the skies, then know you do so only with the permission of Allah. Isn't this fulfilled as a prophecy? Yes, but Imam Ash-Shanqiti and others say this should be discussed under the chapter of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, because it's connected around them. So it's as yet, what's supposed to happen around this has as yet not been fulfilled regarding Ya'juj and Ma'juj, because they're connected to this stuff to do with traveling outside of and piercing through the heavens. So that's why I haven't mentioned it here, because it's not connected. The full hadith, when it's read in context, and the full ayat and everything will show you that it's connected to another subject. So, are there any questions over what we have covered today? No? Yes.
Regarding the mention of the classified documents regarding the big game.
The great game.
The great game. How the riches and wealth of the Muslim countries were plundered by, in particular, the French colony.
French and the British.
Yeah. Was it the same as I've read previously in Africa, where the wealth that they have, they're only allowed to gain access to 15% of it, and the other 85% of the wealth of the actual country itself is taken from them and put into like French and British banks, and then if they want to access that wealth, they have to get it at cost of interest and loaned back to them. And this all comes on to the back of that, where people say Muslim countries and African countries, why they're so poor, why they're so backward.
Okay, so the question is the Sykes-Picot agreement similar to agreements that were made in Africa, in which they can access 15% of their wealth and the other 85% remains in the hands of those overseeing powers? And thus, when they want to use their wealth, they have to pay through interest-bearing means. Alhamdulillah. No, it's worse, because the other countries that are kafir and not Muslim at least are paid a pittance, even if it's a pittance, for the importing and exporting of trade. The Sykes-Picot agreement is free reign. When you control the means of transportation, the importation and exportation, the product itself, the packaging itself, and the actual people who are in charge of guarding the borders of your country cannot check those trains. They can't check if there's cocaine or heroin or anything on them. How is heroin getting from Afghanistan all the way here on the streets? There was only one time where that heroin trade was interrupted, and that was from 1996 to 2001, because the Taliban were destroying those fields. So if you remember, if you study back at that time, study heroin prices, heroin quality, and the sales on the streets. Because this was being discussed in the news. Even ministers in this government were talking about what was going on. How do ministers in the government know the quality of heroin? Remember, to know the quality and purity of heroin, you have to have basic knowledge of chemistry. A petri dish, a sample of the heroin, an iodine dropper, and a dip to understand the colors that the heroin goes through to tell you what level of purity that it is. If it turns blue, that's 100% pure heroin. If it turns yellowish blue, that is usually 50%. If it just turns yellow, you're looking at between 2 and 10%. That's for people who understand how this stuff works. I thought ministers and government are there for the greater freedom of people. How do they know about heroin? Because they're taking it. Because they take it. And they're getting money off of this. So it's worse because we're not even being paid at all. It's just being stripped. It's just being stripped. And when other people see this, it's like when a big bully comes in, other people get involved. What are the Japanese involved for? We all like sushi. Well, subhanAllah. But it doesn't matter because other people get involved. That's why it has to be a very, very important lesson for a Muslim to understand that no one's going to back you up unless it's a Muslim of the same creed. You have to be on that. The Shia won't help you. You saw what happened with the Tatar. The Shia won't help you. Salafis won't help you. The Hizb ut-Tahrir, they won't help you because they get dipped in boiling oil and they'll tell you everything you want to. They will not help you. It is only the people of the right creed that you depend on, not the Japanese, not the Chinese, not the Koreans. Their food tastes good, but you don't enter into any military agreements or anything like that because they're not your friends on a military level. So, any other questions? No? Okay, so we'll break from here, and inshallah, when we come together next week, we're going to start the introduction to the unfulfilled signs that have not come to pass yet. So we're going to start to talk about those in greater detail. Inshallah, Allah preserve us so we complete this. Just as a quick reminder, as you can see, and the duration of time it's taken to go from the bayan stage to the halaqah stage to the dars stage, which is what we're engaged in. We have been able to go through creed. We've been able to go through fiqh. We've been able to go through ihsan. We've been able to go through the signs of the time. These are the 4 rings of the deen, 4 rings of the religion. So once we complete this, then we can start to look at other plenary matters we can look at, because the completion of the fundamentals of the religion in a basic to a intermediate aspect has been done. So at that point, I will then open the floor up to you regarding what other things you would like to look at. I know there have been requests. There have been discussions about these matters. There have been statements put forward. Good. But we'll want to open the floor up to slaves of Allah on our next step, if Allah wills us to complete this. Because we can now start to we can start to talk about the science of hadith and other, because we now understand what's fundamental. So everything that comes after is post that. So I say subhanakallahumma wa hamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk innahu ghafurur rahim arhamir rahimin wa la ilaha illa Allah wassalamu alaykum.